Hi, I'm Dave, welcome to the channel. In this video we're going to make the VW bus look cooler and maybe go a bit better. So I know I said in the main review video for this, link in the top corner, that track times don't really matter and it's not relevant because this is just a bus to have fun with, but indulge me. Let's have some fun with this bus and see if we can set a lap time. Now this is with the magnets in. As it came out the box, I've done nothing to it. But as you can see, it hangs on fairly well, like you'd expect something with magnets to. But at the same time, it's not very forgiving. It's either in the slot and driving, or it's on its side. Like that, with little or no warning, because of course it's got magnets in it. But for the purposes of this exercise, box stock with the magnets in, the Carrera T2b made 7.162 seconds on my track. Now 6 seconds is the time for a good car without magnets, so it's never going to be fast. But we need to have a bit of a look inside. There's a couple of things I need to do, and there's something I want to do just for fun, really. Now you'll note it's still a pain to get the chassis and the body apart because of those two little pips on the front, which, I'm just going to get rid of them. They don't need to be there. I don't quite know why Carrera put them in. It's not helping, it's just making things awkward when you try and take the car apart. So that should work a bit better. There we are, that's in. Yep. And now that comes out an awful lot easier. I think everybody should do this to their T2b regardless, because they're pointless little tabs. They're just an inconvenience. Now what I'm going to do is take the magnets out. There's one in the back under the rear axle and a bigger one in the middle underneath the chip. I'm going to take both of them out and then run it around the track just to see. So pop the rear axle out, and there's a little clip, and that magnet should come out of there. There we are. No, didn't need to take the motor out. But the one under the chip, we'll have to unscrew the chip, and then there's a little clamp, and we can take the big magnet out from the middle of the car. And we'll just put it all back together again. Axle back in. And no other changes, just box stock but with the magnet taken out. I'll put the body back on, which is now a lot easier. And take it back to the track again. Now obviously, this is a very top heavy car. I'm not expecting great things from this. It's going to be slower than with magnets, obviously. But let's see what it's like to drive. So initially, quite a lot of wheel spin from the rear wheels pulling away because there's nothing holding the back down now really. And as you can see, it's not quick. You can't really accelerate out the corners. But it's much more forgiving on the corners because the back is now able to drift rather than the car just tip on its side suddenly, which is what happens with the magnets. You get a little bit more like that. I think it's probably more fun to drive without the magnets, even though it's noticeably slower. You've got half a chance of working out where the car can handle a bit of speed and where it can't on the track, because you get a bit of an idea that it's going to break away. Yeah, a bit of a drift there, look. So although it's a slower lap, you probably feel you're getting closer to as best as it can do while you're driving it, which in itself I think is probably fairly satisfying. But that does still happen. So 7.162 with the magnet in, and 10.041 without the magnet. I mean, nearly 3 seconds slower. I was kind of expecting that. In fact, I was expecting it to be a bigger gap, but nonetheless. So let's try and make it better. Let's negate the removal of the magnets. There's a lot we can do to this. Carrera have done quite a good job of keeping as much of the centre of gravity as low as they can. They've got that deep chassis in there with virtually no clearance. And obviously that's to keep the weight fairly near the bottom. The axles are set relatively high to the floor pan of the chassis, I guess. Again, to keep as much of the weight below the axles as they possibly can. The other problem is the contact patch on these tyres is very, very tiny. So I've got the trusty Swift 16 tyre truer, and I'm just going to kind of take some of the radius off those tyres just to make that contact patch more than 3mm wide. Just try and make it a bit wider. And then eventually I will just replace the magnets with a little bit of lead just to help weigh it down, because those wheels are spinning a little. And the other thing I'm going to do is add a bit of body float to it by trimming all the way around the edge of this chassis. Because it's like a clamshell, I think the chassis will fit inside the body if we can just narrow the chassis a little bit. And the other thing with body float is the interior and the body fit to the chassis with 4 pegs that look like this, that are a part of the body. But they fit into, at the front, as you can see, the 2 places they fit into are like cups, and the same at the rear. So once they're in, there is no ability and no movement for the body to float relative to the chassis, because it's held in these cups. So as you can see with the multi-tool I used in the background there, I've ground those off so they're flat, so that when the body sits on it, it can skate across the tops of those chassis mount plates, and the same in the rear. So that should help it float once we've removed some other material from it in order to get it to fit inside the body. And here I have done that already. So there's the 2 posts and the other 2 posts that I've ground down. And then additionally, I've gone along the side here and the same the other side. And that is now, I mean, it's paper thin. It's barely there at all, but it's there. It doesn't mean the chassis loses any strength. And then I've ground off all the way across the back and down the sides and up those little light fixtures and all the way across the front. And you'll see now that if I put that back inside the body, you can see there's a gap all the way round. And there is, I mean, far too much really. There is plenty of room for the body and the chassis to float. It won't be huge because it will just be on the screws in the screw holes, but it's there. Now, these 4 posts are what really sets the body height onto the chassis. And obviously you can't go down too low with these big wheels without everything fouling. So there's going to have to be a little bit of Dremel work here, but that's fine because these bodies are held in with 4 screws with the interior. So you pop the screws out, can take the interior out, Dremel away to your heart's content, and then fit it back in again. Might be able to use those holes to help me with a little bit with some clearances, but I think we're going to end up with a hole in the floor. And you might be able to see I have run the tyres through the truer, and that little narrow contact patch, while it's still not wide, is probably 50-60% wider again than it was before. So that's got to help a little bit on the track. So if you are of a nervous disposition, you should probably look away now. In order to lower this van, I had to get quite savage with the Dremel. I had to make a very big hole to make sure the motor would fit through, and it sort of sits under the seats, and yeah, if you peered in through the windows you'd see a hole in the floor, but not really. And then I've had to clearance the front wheel arches, as you can see as well, and up into under the driver's seat, which did need a little bit of glue to stick it back in to hold it in place. And the other thing I had to do was grind the bottom off the gear stick and glue it back in from the top. So that bit bottom left of the picture in the centre there, that's a re-glued in, having ground off gear lever. And that, all in all, means we can go from this, which is how it was stock, and how they come out the factory stock, to something a bit more like this, which is, as you can see, much lower, a little bit of a rake towards the front, and the way that's sitting, trust me, as a Volkswagen person, is how most of us run our Volkswagens, certainly in the UK. I can't remember the last time I saw a standard height one. This looks better, and I think it's going to work better. So for a bit of maths, it was 66mm high before I started, and now it's exactly 60. So I've lost 6mm of height out of it, tucked the chassis up under the body, and the wheels up under the wheel arches. Should have lowered the centre of gravity a fair bit, and with the tyre help as well, let's see what we've managed. So first off, no wheel spin off the line. The car feels a lot more planted. It's certainly going quicker before the back end breaks away into a drift, and that's obviously down to putting the lead weight back in and, you know, increasing the width of the contact patch on the tyres. I put about 5 grams of weight under the motor where the longer magnet was before, and about 3 in the back where the shorter magnet was under the rear axle. And that seems to have done the trick quite nicely. As you can see, this is now a bus that, combined with a lower centre of gravity, handles quite a lot better, even without a magnet. And this is now a drivable car, and it will go into a pit lane, and I didn't crash it because it's much more predictable. So let's have a look. Box stock, 10 seconds. Modified with no magnet, 7.972. Now, it's nearly as quick as with a magnet, but it's not quite. But it's definitely much more fun to drive than box stock with the magnet in. Would the tuning changes make much difference to the car with the magnet in? They might do a little bit, but it's not anything I'm going to get overexcited about. So it's gone a bit quicker, but mostly it just looks a lot cooler. And of course, Mr. Thumbs Up Man agrees. Although he should be Mr. No Worries Wave Man, shouldn't he, for this? Anyway, thanks for watching one of my videos. If you liked it, you will find a button specifically for that. Please subscribe to the channel, it really does help. And if you hit the bell, you'll get a notification the next time I post a video. And of course, check out this Slot Car channel. This is Slot Car Dad. Shout out to another one of the English guys doing slot cars in his loft and putting it on YouTube.